Hey everybody, John here from the esports department, ready to go over today's slate. Vici Gaming versus RNG, JDG versus Sunning. Let's start out with Vici and RNG. Vici at plus 105 at the moment as I'm recording, RNG at minus 145. The line has slowly moved towards Vici over the course of the day, but I will say the line has moved towards basically every underdog so far this year. I think people are kind of getting the idea that the books are overvaluing favorites from last season and a new season. So people are just generally leaning towards underdogs. Once it gets to a price like this, I mean, you're not really gaining anything by going on to an underdog, but I do think that Vici has a very good shot in this series. They're a more continuation of the same roster than Vici. They've kind of gotten a new play style that I like. They're definitely leaning towards Forge more than iBoy now. At the moment, our projections, I noticed when I was doing them earlier that iBoy is projected higher than Forge. I think that's reasonable, but I think Forge makes a great candidate for a GPP captain tonight. Might be kind of low owned comparatively. Vici in general might not be super high owned, and if they are, Forge I think makes a great choice for a GPP captain. I do kind of like Vici to win this. I think Xiaohu might be a little bit outmatched in the mid lane by Forge at the moment, especially the way that they're playing. Like, they're giving Forge a lot of resources. They're putting him on late game carries, the Cassidon type champions. And I'm not sure that that's where Xiaohu wants to be. I'm not sure that's what his comfort level is. Like, Xiaohu XLB is not a super strong mid-jungle duo. Not to say that you shouldn't be playing RNG and Cash or they don't deserve to be a favorite, but I do kind of like Vici, I think. And you'll probably find me on some Vici lineups running around tonight. Reasonable shot for them, I think. I am still a little bit worried about a sub in the jungle for them. Gelati has talked about it before, but Vici has Layan now, and Layan and Forge have played together before, so it kind of makes sense that Forge might be, and they were very good when they played together, so it kind of makes sense that Forge might push towards trying to get Layan into the jungle. Worries me a little bit. Support, I think they'll probably stick with Hong. But yeah, interesting matchup there. Bot lane advantage to RNG, mid-jungle duo advantage to Vici. Top lane, probably a slight advantage to Cube, but could go either way on that one. We haven't really seen enough new to really know for sure. Both teams look good in their first matchup of the year. Vici Gaming beat BLG, who I think is a pretty good team. RNG beat OMG, who I'm pretty convinced is cooked, and kind of talked about it before that I'm not sure OMG is going to be anything this season other than like maybe a bottom 5 team. So, a couple reasonable options there. Going over to JDG Sunning, this is the kind of matchup that really makes me sad because Sunning has come out of the gate with 2 wins here and is probably vastly overvalued, but they put them in this matchup where we don't get to take advantage of it. Like, I would have loved to see something like maybe Sunning BLG, somewhere where they were up against a team where they would be a reasonably sized favorite and we could take the other side. I don't really like them in the JDG matchup. We have seen that some teams that have come back from, not come back from, but that played the midseason cup have had a bit of a hangover coming into this season. TES's game 1 was a little sketchy for what you'd expect from them against the Rogue Warriors, and FPX lost to LNG, which I don't think anybody really saw coming. So who knows, maybe JDG falls in that same barrel. I don't think I would bank on it, though. Kanavi should be able to play this meta very well, and he's like the glue for JDG right now. I'm not too worried about JDG losing to Sunning here, unfortunately. I will say for ownership purposes on this slate, you got to think JDG is going to be number 1, RNG number 2, Vici number 3, and this might be pretty close, kind of what we talked about before. Maybe like a 5 to 8% difference or something between RNG and Vici. Sunning is the LNG from last night. Given that LNG did win last night, though, this might be a good night. I don't like this matchup for Sunning, and this might be a good night to kind of fade the ideas that other people might have in their heads. After seeing LNG win last night, people might lean a little bit more towards Sunning than they normally would. And I think this might be a good night to fade that. Vici feels like a decent shot to me. RNG and JDG feels like the cash lineup and also maybe a reasonable GPP lineup if people are starting to spread their ownership a little bit more. So I think probably for GPPs today, I'm just going to land on JDG with RNG or Vici, probably mostly Vici to try to get ownership. If you're playing something like the $15, sure, throw some Sunning lineups in there. It's a good slate for double dogs since I think the second dog is barely a dog, if at all. So it makes a good slate for double dogs to try to take some down, something like the $15. But in general, I do think JDG is a significantly better favorite than someone like TES last night. I think Rogue Warriors has the ability to kind of stretch up and beat better teams more so than someone like Sunning. So I do like JDG on that side. Looking at cash lineups, well, I guess we'll check the differentials first. So on a Vici and JDG differential set, you can tell JDG just kind of crushing everywhere. The only kind of close positions in the top lane, so you get Cube in there if you're going to play JDG Vici with heavy JDG would be the optimal. I did want to kind of comment real quick before we keep going on that on another way to try to get ownership leverage, and I talked about it once or twice before, but I think it's something that people miss a lot of the times. Sometimes when people are looking for ownership leverage, they try to do really, really weird stuff. They play like a 2-2-1-1 or like a 3-2 with an opposing whatever to try to get the ownerships. Sometimes you can get like significantly better ownerships just by doing very small things. I talk a lot about the captain downgrade. You can see, looking over at my ownership sheet, there was a captain swap that won last night, just a standard 4-2 lineup, but switch the captains so that they're playing the mid laner from the team that they're on a 2-stack of, not the 4-stack. There was a jungle captain downgrade lineup that won early this year, where they could have played AD carry captain. They played jungle captain instead. That kind of stuff I think is a great way to gain leverage. Another really easy way to do it is just to 4-stack the wrong side of the matchup, like the wrong side. So and if you were to say like JDG and Vici, JDG would be the 4-stack in general. Sometimes you can just 4-stack Vici instead, and even that will be enough. That there will be a lot of people out there playing Vici, but a lot of them will just be on a 2-stack of Vici. So I think that's a decent way to gain leverage as well. Vici and JDG, so yeah, if you're heavy on JDG, Cube is the Vici player that stands out the most. Vici Gaming paired with Sunning. Once again, it's Cube that's standing out the most in the jungle, with Aches coming up second with a close third being Hong. The Sunning carries do all the work for that team, so you usually want them when you're stacking them. RNG and JDG, a little bit more mixed up. New actually projects better than Zoom, which is wild, but just kind of shows you what we're seeing from the projections about New. The mid lane and jungle, or mid lane AD carry and support, look at those numbers. Like, look how close those projections are between JDG and RNG. So these teams project very, very similarly today. Going to RNG and Sunning, once again, New looking like he's projecting better up in the top lane, and then support coming next with a 0.05 differential between Sword Art and Ming. So very, very close there as well. You can see what I talked about with Sunning. Their carries do a lot of the work for that team. So generally speaking, when you're pairing with Sunning, the mid and AD carry for Sunning are almost always in the stack. Going over to potential lineups, so I like to just do the same thing every day for anybody that hasn't watched these videos before. I'll just start trying to make the most optimal lineup I can think of, and if it doesn't fit from salary, I'll go back and keep trying to do it again. So let's start. I do think JDG and RNG is the cash lineup. I think JDG should probably be the heavier stack, but let's see how that turns out. Projection-wise, Loken slightly higher than Betty, so let's try to get Loken in at captain. We know this probably isn't going to work, but let's try it. And higher projection in the top lane is New. Is that what I had there? Yeah. I know we were just talking about it, but XLB and Kanavi. Kanavi always projects super well, so not surprised there. Yagao over Xiaohu, and at support, Hong and Ming. Ming actually showing up better there. Only leaving 4,300 for the team spot, which isn't going to be enough for JDG or Royal, so we can't pull that off. It was a fair way off, so I'm going to skip trying to switch the AD carries and just go straight to trying to do mid captains. So we go Yagao with Xiaohu. If we try to get the higher scorers in there, RNG generally cheaper, so any spot where they're higher scoring is just a salary saver for us. The support's very expensive from those two teams, which kind of hurts us as well. 4,700, that's not going to get us there. I don't think that switching Xiaohu and Yagao is going to be enough for that. They're too close in price, so it looks like we're going jungle captain, which I know a lot of people in the Discord have already been talking about this morning, but I just wanted to run through the process to kind of show you how you can easily figure out which one to do. But it looks like it's going to be jungle captains. In the top lane, we would want New. In the mid lane, we'd be looking at Yagao. At AD carry, Loken. and support Lumao. So just a straight 4-2. When you go to the team slot there, you can now afford the team slots we want. It leaves a full 1,000 on the table and comes in at 603.8. And that is, if I'm looking correctly, yes, the highest projection we're going to be able to get, given that JDG has the higher score at all 4 of those positions. So it looks like the high cash lineup, 603.8 for the Kanavi captain for JDG with new. I imagine it's probably a pretty popular lineup. How close? Not even really close between XLB and Kanavi either. So if you believe heavily in Vici Gaming and you wanted to try to play them, even in cash, let's have a look. Probably able to get Loken captain. Let's see if we go back to our spreads, this time for JDG and Vici. It's JDG in every spot, but the top lane is the one that's closest, so we'd want to play Cube, and Kanavi, and Yagao, Lumao. 5,300 left over in team, so you can play 80 carry captains there. And just to double check that that's actually the highest scoring iteration, it's 86 and 94. The mid laners not close on those numbers. So definitely, if you wanted to go Vici, it's also a 4 JDG, but with iBoy and Cube being the best cash lineup you can set up there. Some standout options for GPP lineups, like we were talking about, I like to just kind of comb through and see if anybody stands out. Kanavi stands out, Kanavi captain lineups. So maybe if you were going to play something like JDG and Vici, you can play Kanavi captain versions of that. The JDG RNG lineups with Kanavi captain are already going to be pretty highly owned because he's the guy that fits as captain for those lineups. Anybody projecting? Angel from Sunning projecting pretty high. I think he makes a reasonable chance. He's a guy that can go off. I wouldn't try Xiaohu. Forge, I think, like I said earlier, I think Forge, if you're going to play Vici Gaming, I think he makes a really good captain, especially in this matchup with Xiaohu, where he might be able to kind of have his way if he plays something really aggressive. Just looking around to see if there's anybody else that kind of sticks out. Cube is a guy that's capable of having big series, but I think I'd rather just go with Forge if I was going to downgrade my captain on Vici. I don't think you need to go all the way down to the top lane. So those make the most sense. Doesn't seem like a slate where game stacking is going to be real strong to me. Both these series do kind of have the potential to be a little bit weak, but I think they both have the potential to be weak, in which case it's going to be really hard for a game stack to be super effective. You can still get low ownership that way, but not something that I think I would recommend on this slate. On this slate, if I was trying to get lower ownership, I would just go with a captain downgrade. I think that makes the most sense to me. Xiaohu probably has sub-risk still. We've been talking about this. They won their first series pretty handily, so there was no real point in subbing him out, but Cryan is there on the bench and is probably a better mid laner at this point in their careers than Xiaohu. So you always are going to have to be worried about Xiaohu. If you want to try to keep him out of your lineups in cash and stuff, I wouldn't blame you at all. Note that if you go to RNG JDG, those numbers are all so close between mid, 80 carry, and support. There's another good GPP option for you. Just play the heavy RNG version of this or the heavy Vici version. See if you can't get lower ownership that way. Those are some things that make sense to me when it comes to those kind of building today. Yeah, high ceiling type players. I think Forge, very high ceiling today. Angel probably has high ceiling if they win, although I think it's unlikely. Huanfeng always has a huge ceiling when his team wins. So those are some areas you can go in to try to gain a little bit of leverage today. Going back to look at ownerships, I like to just go over this on everything. Last night I pasted this in the chat, but this is some of the lowest ownerships I've ever seen on a 2-game slate, and that's the ownership percentages for LNG last night. In the $333, 0% of players were playing the support from LNG, Dwan. 0%. There was nobody. And even if you look at like Chenlin17, who ended up having a great game, 0.42%. So even just having an LNG stack, like if you were LNG top, you were like top 5 in the $333. Just it doesn't matter what combination you had, doesn't matter what order they were in, doesn't matter if you were 3-3, 4-2, 2-4. If you just had those guys in your lineup with top, you were in the top 5 guaranteed. So this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about when we're talking about leverage on slates, and I'm talking about, There's no team in professional league that beats another team like 95% of the time or whatever. There's always something weird that can happen in the draft or something weird that can happen in strategy. Somebody could just not have slept well. There's always decent chances that some mistakes get made and the other team wins. So if you're ever seeing ownership percentages like 5 and 7%, you should just automatically be hopping all over that no matter what the team is. RW last night also, even these are way too low. 14s, 4s, 9s, 10s, even those are way too low. Being on Road Warriors last night was a very solid call for GPP with these ownerships. So just stuff to take note of there. Last night was a bit of a weird slate with Chocho being, let's see, what did Chocho even end up at? 78% in the 333 and 62% in the Titan. Honestly, 62% is lower than I would have thought. I would have thought we'd see an even bigger number there. Seems like I don't even know who took his ownership. Such low ownerships in general for the supports. I guess Crisp took almost 25% or over 25%. But you can see still in the what has been winning area there's a game stack. And other than that, it is 4-2s, sometimes with the captain switched around, sometimes jungle downgrades. That is what you're going to see. When the slates start getting a little bit more open, when we start seeing 5-game slates and stuff like that, you're going to see more weird stuff win, like random one-offs and stuff like that, because there's more games for them to come from. But especially on these 2-game slates, man, 4-2s just win most of the time. So you can try to do weird stuff, switching up who your 4 is and who your 2 is. You can try switching around where your captains are at. You can go 3-3s. They always have a shot, especially when the games project close like the ones tonight. But you just don't need to be doing super weird stuff. That's what I'm trying to tell you here. I get people messaging me all the time, like, I got a brilliant idea to do this weird stuff where I'm going to have one member of the opposing team and a 4th team just in the team slot, and then I'll get a better captain. Don't worry about any of that stuff. Look what's winning. It's just 4-2s, man. That's what it's always been. The only thing is you got to make sure you're on 4-2s that leave you for a reasonable chance at profit instead of just chopping for $700 when you're in for $2,200. Oh, sorry about that. My throat's a little dry. But yeah, that's really all we've got going on tonight. It's a lot of different setups. A lot of people have wanted me to kind of go over a little bit more about how to actually build these. So let me just do a quick refresher on today's video about kind of how I would go about doing this slate. So let's say that I want to play GPP. We already kind of talked about cash and what I think the optimal cash lineup is. But let's say I wanted to play GPP today, and I want to avoid playing JDG and RNG because I just have generally recommended not doing that. I like playing the double dogs in Vici and Sunning, and then I want to get, I'm going to lower my ownership the other way by playing heavy Vici stacks with my JDG instead of playing 4 JDG and some Vici. So how I would go about doing that, I would start by, make this a little bit bigger, start by filtering teams. We'll start with the double dog lineups, Sunning and Vici. In the captain slots, we can try to lower our ownerships if we want. We're definitely not going to want to play. We're double dogs here, so we don't need to mess around with captains that are too weird. We can get rid of the top laners. We can get rid of the teams. We can get rid of the supports. And then we can kind of talk about whether or not we would want to play jungles. I don't think with this particular setup we would really need to. So we'll just leave iBoy, Forge, Huanfeng, and Angel. And then at the other positions, I'll just leave everybody live. I don't mind getting the 3-3s in there if we need to. Let's start with the 4-2s, though. So I'll take Vici Gaming team out of here because I want to play 4 stacks of Vici. We'll go over to the multi-lineup tool. I'm going to drop it down to 80% because I want it to build every lineup it can build. I'm going to add a rule under teams. Give me 4 players from Vici Gaming. Save settings. Set this to whatever I need to set it to. It's going to make 16 lineups. I'm just going to save them. Now they're over here. Now I can clear out right here. I can go back over here. Now I need to switch to the other side, so I'll put Vici Gaming Team back in. Take Sunning Gaming Team out. Go back to Settings, go back to Team. Clear out the rules. Now we'll add a new rule, 4 players from Sunning. 16 more lineups. Save them. I'm on 32 lineups now. Clear that out. Head back here. We'll put Sunning back in the pool. Now we'll switch. We're done with the double dogs, so we'll go with JDG and Vici. JDG team, I must have them excluded at the moment. No. Oh, I didn't have them back in. There we go. JDG and Vici. Going back to captains. Maybe with this setup, because we have Kanavi, maybe I want to mess around a little bit more with who I'm willing to captain. So let's take out Lumao and we'll take out Zoom, leaving me with iBoy, Forge, Kanavi, Yagao, and Loken. Maybe we'll go out back and get Aches. We know Kanavi is capable of a really good game, so maybe we leave Aches in there. Now I'll go back to team. I'll eliminate Vici because we said we mostly want to get Vici captain lineups. Or we mostly want to get Vici heavy lineups. We'll add a rule again. 4 players, Vici. See how many lineups it generates that way. We have a lot of different captain options here, so we're going to get a lot of different kinds of lineups with 4 Vici. Some of them are going to have a JDG captain, but they're all just going to have 4 Vici players in there. 24 lineups saved, 56 total lineups. A completely decent setup for tonight's GPPs if you wanted to play 56 entries. You could throw some game stacks in here if you wanted. You could throw the 4 JDGs with Vici. You could go back and do 3 threes by just leaving both teams in there. You don't even have to set a rule if you do that. So let me go back and do that real quick just to show you how it would work. So if I leave both teams in, team slots, Vici. Just leave both teams in, go in here, go to settings, get rid of my rules. Now it's just going to make every combination, so it's going to make the 4 twos and the 3 threes, and that'll give us a whole lot of extra lineups. 3 threes, there are a lot more combinations than the 4 twos, so we'll end up with a ton of options here. It's probably going to be over around 100. I have it set to do 100 lineups right now, but we're probably going to have to edit that. So here you can see how you can get lineups that are a little bit lower owned. The 56 that I've already generated are probably going to be higher ownership than any of the 3 threes that are going to pop around here. Well, let's see how many it comes up with. It might be over 150 to be honest. It's a fair few lineups when you have 6 captains in here and you don't set any rules. 120 lineups. So there's 120 lineups that you could use right there. I think this is a completely solid setup. This is just every combination of Vici and JDG. When you do a setup like this, you're going to have some commonly owned lineups, like this Loken 4 JDG lineup that's right here. This one will probably be pretty highly owned. But you put this one in there to hedge you, so that when that one happens to win, you can probably get your money back, or maybe you make a little tiny profit, maybe you lose just a little bit, but it at least kind of breaks you even, so that when something like an Aches captain wins that you might have solo ownership on, you've kind of survived your way to the point where you could get the Aches captain lineups. So yeah, this would be a solid setup for tonight's GPPs if you wanted. I just wanted to show you guys just quickly how you can go about doing that, and if you want, you can also do this thing I've talked about in my other video, in this add tag area. I'll just do RR2, add tag. Now all these lineups are tagged as RR2. You can click Save Lineups. Now you go over here. When you're replacing your entries, when you upload your entry file, when you're replacing them, I don't have entries uploaded, so I don't have the button, but there's a button up here that says Mass Swap or Mass Replace Lineups. When you click it, it will ask you, do you want to use the RR2 lineups, or do you want to use the lineups that have no tag, which is the ones we did before. So you can go tournament by tournament. You can register 56, you could save 56 slots in one tournament, save 120 slots in another one, and overwrite all 56 into one entry and all 120 into the other tournament. It's just a really simple and efficient way to do it. So just wanted to show you guys that after talking about the slate a little bit. I'm probably going to record an Evergreen video later today as well. There's something I wanted to talk about on Evergreens, so keep your eyes open, everybody. Appreciate you, and as usual, feel free to message me on Twitter or Discord, anything like that. I'm always down to talk. The guy who won the Titan last night had talked to me the night before in DM and was asking me about lineup construction and how to set things up, and wins the Titan overnight using the things we were talking about. So don't be afraid to drop me a message, and we're happy to chat, man, for sure. Talk to you guys later.